Welcome to the Oshow. I'm Laura Babcock. Bit by bit, report by report, this Greenbelt scandal is only growing. And if today's strange press conferences by the Premier and the Minister of Housing are any indication, this government is in fact spiraling. Where do they go from here? We've got the best analysis on the Greenbelt scandal. I want to invite back Keith Leslie. He, of course, is a former journalist from Queen's Park and the Canadian Press and did a great job last week on trying to assess where the scandal was then. And there's so much more that's happened, Keith. Welcome back to the Oshow. We also have Mark Cripps. Mark, last week you gave us a look inside the Ministry of Housing and what it really was like when the Greenbelt process was followed under the previous government. And Margaret Shkimba is, of course, a columnist at the Hamilton Spectator. The Greenbelt has a huge impact on Hamilton. Lots of the lands are part of this area, and this city has been involved in the fight from the get. So let me start with you, Keith. You have seen a lot of scandals, lots of integrity reports come back at Queen's Park. What was your take on what the Integrity Commissioner said about the Greenbelt scandal and the way that the Ford government handled it? And what's your take on how they tried to spin it today?
Oh, my goodness. Well, first of all, the Integrity Commissioner basically, along with finding Minister Clark, violated the rules in several instances and provided no oversight, confirmed a lot of what we heard from the Auditor General, used a bit of different phrasing, of course. I said, this whole Greenbelt land swap was a chaotic and reckless process marked by deception. That kind of thing right there. That kind of nails it right down. And yet, what did we hear the government say? Well, I have to build houses. I mean, Premier Ford, his Thursday morning news conference coming out after the statement, when we were all shocked he didn't announce the minister's resignation right away. He comes out Thursday morning and makes it very, very clear he's standing by this minister because no matter what the excuse is, I have to build houses, 1.5 million houses. And he was, asked specifically, come on, this minister in particular used to be the most vocal about ministerial accountability against Liberal cabinet ministers, especially during the gas plant scandals, in there every day demanding a minister resign. Why is he not holding ministerial accountability? What about that concept? Got to build houses. Didn't matter what he was asked. The answer was got to build houses. And then when Minister Clark came out, of course, it seemed even worse. They're both going to get these questions, and I would suspect every PC cabinet minister and MPP who pokes their head above the parapet is going to get these very same questions until something is done. And something being done, it's a two-step process, and I think this is why Ford is reluctant to kick Clark out right now, because it's not going to stop the calls, the demands that all these lands be put right back into the Greenbelt where they should have been in the first place. So if he's not prepared to do that, he's not prepared to dump Clark. So he's going to take some sort of outside force pressure, or they're trying to spin it as, we're just defending everybody. And Ford literally lost his shit at one point with Colin DeMello. Well, you've got a big fancy home, Colin. Not everyone's going to afford. When you start attacking the messengers because they have a home they can live in, and then Siobhan Morris from CTV, I don't have a home. It was hilarious. And talk about derailing your own news conference and losing the message completely. So I thought their attempts at spin were pathetic. But the fact that this minister and the Premier, I accept responsibility, full thing stops with me, I regret it. But no consequences. We're going to plow ahead because we're building homes.
All I heard from the Premier was, but housing, but housing, but housing. And then all we heard from the minister was, but process, but process, but process. Those two little pivots aren't that slick, guys, and they're not going to last. They're not going to make it if even the next 24 hours. And right after minister's press conference, the interim leader of the Liberal Party, he was pissed. He said, this is only starting. You're just dragging out the beginning by not stepping down as minister.
In the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, for the last 15 years, I would say the Greenbelt is the signature, most important policy plank in that department. So it's what everyone holds up. And again, go back to the Mike Harris government. They actually started the Greenbelt with the Oak Ridges Moraine. So this whole movement to create this Greenbelt, larger Greenbelt to protect lands from development, straddles both parties. So that was my first reaction was, I can't believe, but I can't believe that a minister would not be involved in the signature policy decision like this. So let's remember the Greenbelt was created, and then it was in the legislation, it was to go through a 10-year review. So every 10 years, you review the Greenbelt boundaries. In 2017, we did that. We had tremendous pressure 700 applications for land to be removed. We made some minor boundary adjustments, and guess what? The developers didn't like that, right? So how did we go from 5 years later to now basically finding a way to open up the legislation that was there? It should have been, 2027 before we reviewed the Greenbelt again. So how did we get into a position? So when you make a decision like that, you've got to, the minister has to be involved, right? Like, you're now basically circumventing the Greenbelt plan. You're saying, now we're going to open it up. We're going to relook at it in 5 years. So that was I'm really, and again, in the press conference today, I think a lot of reporters noted this, and I would say this as well. Steve Clark is a competent politician. He's been around for 40 years. He knows what he's doing. Yeah. And I could sense in his voice that he is deeply, deeply troubled by what is going on right now. And he's, it's a rally around the family moment in the PC government right now. They are basically rally around the family. And whoever is advising them that they can ride this through needs to be fired. Where is the crisis communications going on here? Admit you made a mistake, right, and rectify. And so for me, right now, the moment is now right for the government to say, look, if the process was this flawed and they are admitting that, then put the lands back in the Greenbelt and conduct a proper process to have them potentially removed or not removed. But if you're admitting the process is flawed, that you made a mistake, I don't know how you just say, oh, well, and the rest of us are supposed to go, oh, well, it's like, it seems like.
I mean, so there's two parts to that. One, I mean, this isn't a mistake. It's not a mistake. We have on video Ford saying that he was going to open up the Greenbelt to a little group of developers. We know now that during pre-election, they were making some moves towards this end. We know that they sent in these chief of staffs, right, to these ministers' offices. I mean, this whole thing looks like the cake was baked before the last election. And the fact that the AG showed us that a few people through envelopes at a dinner ended up making $8.3 billion in potential profit just makes it stink to high hell. But this is not a mistake. This is a scheme that got caught and that they are now scrambling to try to cover for. And so I don't know, Mark, if it would be even enough to say, we made a mistake, we'll fix the process, and, the minister is going to resign. I think that with dragging it out the last 2.5 weeks and insulting the intelligence of everybody in Ontario and doubling down and tripling down and making all the mistakes that they're making, they've taken this to a point of no return. This is not a mistake. This is a scheme. They got caught. Whether it's criminal or not is going to be something that the RCMP are going to be pushed to investigate. And if the indication I got from watching the interim Liberal leader just now is any indication, they have made other parliamentarians furious by their lack of respect for Queen's Park, the institution, ministerial responsibility, and democracy. I mean, they could not be digging a deeper ditch, a deeper hole in this Greenbelt scandal if they tried. And that's coming from a crisis communications professional. I have been watching this thing from the sidelines going, are you nuts? Or are you so compromised that you've got no other way to handle this? I mean, that's the question. Why can't Ford fire Clark? Why can't they put those lands back and do this process in an up and up way? Who is controlling the Premier's office? We need to know that, Ontario, because this looks worse by the day. Let me go to you on that point, Margaret, before I lose my mind.
Okay. What do you say? Let me say, I don't believe a word of it. I don't believe anything. I don't believe I don't believe what Ford says. I don't believe what Clark says. I don't believe what Amato says. I believe that they were all into it. I believe that they covered their tracks. I believe that they hid messages. I believe that they used their positions to favor their developers. I believe all of that is true. And not only that, I believe it was the worst that we could all have suspected is what is really true. And that is the most damaging thing, is that we have people who continually are bad talking about the government and how we can't trust the government and governments are crooks and blah, 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 blah. It goes on and on and on. And well, what? Now they're looking at us going, well, what? We told you so. We told you so. They're all crooks anyways. That's why we don't vote. That's why we don't get involved. They're all just crooks. What do you expect? Ha, 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 ha. The only people that are outraged are the people that are actually pay attention. And people don't pay attention that much anymore because cost of living, houses, food, everything's going up, distraction everywhere. This is happening. And now it's just another like blip. Every time a scandal happens, you know, it has to be escalated and escalated in order for something to happen, because nobody recognizes that they've done something wrong right off the hop and say, okay, I made a mistake. I take responsibility means I walk off the job. It doesn't mean, okay, we're just going to turn the page now. You know, what does taking responsibility mean? That's what I want to ask all of them. What does it mean to take responsibility?
Well, you know, Joey Coleman said on the program a couple of weeks ago, our first special on this, when the scandal broke, that there's no shame left in politics. Maybe there isn't. Maybe there isn't. Maybe we learned that from, you know, our neighbors to the south, that how far you can push the envelope and doubling down and tripling down and, you know, trying to project and all the rest of those tricks. But this is bigger than that. This is bigger than that. I had somebody who doesn't watch politics send me a part of this story yesterday. And that is because this touches people where they live. It touches land. It touches the environment. It's a broken promise to the people who did vote for Ford. And it's about $8.3 billion in secret envelopes, right? I mean, this is a scandal that is bigger than just, I don't pay attention to the media. Whether you care about the environment, or whether you care about democracy, or whether you just don't like the idea of some fat cats sending envelopes to a guy at a dinner and ending up with billions while you're suffering in this economy with inflation, whatever it is, it's pissing off this province in a way that I can't remember seeing in Canada. This is big. And the longer that Ford and Minister Clark and all their other sycophants act like this is not a big deal, the more angry we're going to get, because we know what wrong looks like. So let me ask you, Keith, you said on a tweet yesterday to me that there's nothing in it for Clark to resign because, you know, they'll keep asking for heads and everything else. It's just going to unroll. They may not have a vested interest to do it, but do you think that this will get to a point where they're going to have to? Because that's certainly the language that we just heard out of the interim Liberal leader. And I don't know what will happen with the Liberal Party. They have no teeth right now. But that kind of resolve from another, you know, member of Queen's Park, I thought was rather stunning.
Well, the opposition parties have absolutely got something they're going to dig into and keep digging into. We had developers writing government policy that was so distorted and unfair to actually not be a policy at all, but a flawed process that gave away these lands, well, opened them up for development and increased their value by $8 billion and change. By the way, $2016. I think real estate values have gone up since then. But we'll let that go for now. It's just astronomical. People, as you say, people all across the country have tuned into what this is, because it starts with the Greenbelt, a concept that everyone understands. And now, especially when we see those two pieces of land that they're, you know, anti-developer Doug's going to put right back into the Greenbelt now, they're fields of corn. Mm-hmm. So, you know, if this was a farmer making a little bit of extra money from his, you know, selling out the family farm because the kids wouldn't farm anymore and they got it, that's one thing. We're looking, well, this land was owned by someone in China, apparently. So, you know, how does that say for their process? The whole thing they set up was just flawed from the beginning. That's why the Liberal leader, the interim leader, John Fraser, was saying there's so many questions asked. We need to call people to board committees and ask all these questions. Who knew what, when, who was using their personal cell phone, who was using their personal email accounts, and then deleting them. What guys went to jail? Dalton McGuinty's former chief of staff went to jail for wiping hard drives and deleting emails. This is some serious, serious stuff. And this government is going, well, we have to build homes, and we're going to do it with, quote, integrity and trust. How the heck are you going to restore integrity and trust with this minister staying in the job? Even if you'd kept him in cabinet, shuffled him out, at least make some concession. There's absolutely zero concession here other than, you know, Minister Clark is doing what his mandate was. Well, show us the mandate letters. Well, the Integrity Commissioner was at least able to get a piece of it. Let's see all the, you know, no, it's just one after another hiding it. Wouldn't we love to see the health minister's mandate letter on the privatization file? Oh, yes, please. There's so much, but if we don't hold their feet to the fire on this, are we going to do it on the healthcare file? This is the one that everyone gets it. Young people are engaged because of the green file on it. Everyone's engaged all up and down the spectrum. So this is the one that they can hold their feet to the fire and not let go. And it still stinks. It stinks to high heaven. And I think that's what's got everyone ready. It just looks like corruption. So defend yourselves from these corruption charges. No, we're just going to plow ahead because we got to build homes.
And let's admit that's lie number 2 in this. Lie number 1 was they weren't going to touch the Greenbelt. Lie number 2 is they need the Greenbelt to hit their housing targets. That is absolutely a lie. It has been proven over and over. Municipalities were forced to come up with plans for targets. They found densification targets to do it. Over and over, Ford's government has tried to use the excuse that they need the Greenbelt for these houses and that the immigrants that are coming in are the ones, the housing crisis didn't exist, we found out today, as Mark pointed out so astutely to me a little while ago, until 2023, I think Ford said, or 2020 or something, as though this hasn't been happening for a decade. He's sitting there saying, this is new, guys, just popped up. It's because of immigration, because of Trudeau, and we need the Greenbelt.
He also said, he said they threw in 400,000 extra immigrants. He said it wasn't 500,000, it was like 700,000, 800,000, 900,000. What?
So the lies are
He's just literally pulling figures out like Trump does now.
So it's comical to us from a sense of if you don't laugh, you cry. But the reality is, and I want to just go back to you on this point, Mark, you are watching this minister stand there and say, I regret having a process there. I gave it to my chief of staff, like not only not taking accountability, but throwing his chief of staff who's already quit under the bus a second time. And he's standing there, I thought, a diminished man. I thought he looked like a diminished man to the man full of, self-importance that he's always been. And I thought, how sad that you're standing there. This isn't going to last. You are not going to survive this. So Mark, how does it feel for you knowing that ministry inside and out, knowing how improbable and implausible the minister's story is and his spin at this point? I mean, what do you think is going to happen inside that ministry as a result of what we've seen this week?
It's really hard to say. I'm perplexed by the government digging their heels in on this. I still feel like there was a window of opportunity, and there may still be a window of opportunity for them to really, reverse course. And you pointed out a couple things. Number one, these houses aren't needed to meet the 1.5 million home target. And their homes that the very people that Doug is appealing to will never be able to afford in probably their lifetime. These are homes for people who have built up equity, built up wealth, who are going to be able to get the privilege of living in McMansions in pristine green areas of the province. So that's a bit of a fallacy. I think another thing you tapped into was the anger in the public. We're going through an affordability crisis, and the government's trying to lean into the affordability crisis by saying we just want to build homes and make them more affordable. However, when you juxtapose that against the fact that this Greenbelt swap rewarded some of the wealthiest families in Ontario with incredible additional wealth, that most of us will never ever be able to even imagine or comprehend, that rubs the wrong way in terms of their whole messaging around, we're just trying to do this for the little guy while we give those guys a whole bunch of money. So I can't help but think Steve knows his days are numbered. Maybe they shuffle him into a lower cabinet position. He must know something that he's having to keep to himself. He's being a loyal soldier. Him going out today and taking that machine gun fire from the press couldn't have been a very comfortable moment for him. And I don't get me wrong, I'm not sympathizing because I think this is of his own creation. And I just think as the layers of this onion continue to get peeled back, the media are not going to let go of this because they have literally been ridiculed by the government. And now they're just going to go, okay, I saw what happened when the Liberals tried to do this all over the gas plant scandal and try to play it off as, everybody promised to put the gas plants there, and they tried, and the media was like, oh, don't take us for fools. And I think that's kind of where we're at. We're at that moment where, people are being called foolish and they're going, I don't think so.
Great thoughts on this fast-moving scandal. And to everyone watching, this is a show we do for free. It's a community show. So please do subscribe on YouTube, and we'll keep getting you the great content. And stay on it. This matters. It's our future on the line. Thanks, everyone.